What is up, watch friends? Welcome to another episode of Talking Timepieces with Tony. I'm Tony. And here we are today to talk about my new Zenith Defy Skyline skeleton in 41 millimeters. Super stoked. I really dig this watch. So let's just, well, first and foremost, I just want to thank everyone who likes, subscribes, and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And so let's roll the intro and we'll get into it. All right.
You're watching Timepieces with Tony. Talking Timepieces with Tony. You're watching.
All right. First and foremost, a lot of people may look at this and go, well, it looks like an AP or a Gerard Perigo, or a lot of those other brands out there with integrated bracelets and, octagonal bezels and things like that. But let me just fill you in on a little bit of Zenith, okay? Zenith first came out with one thing I love about, first and foremost, about watches is, I do like aesthetics of watches. I do like the way they look. So it depends on the brand is what I go for. In the case of Zenith, I've been a huge Zenith fan for many years, and I had my first Zenith over 20 years ago. It was one of the first luxury watches I ever had, and I regret selling it. But Zenith started in 1865 and is one of the oldest continuously operating Swiss manufacturers. So they've got a whole lot of history. And in 1968 is when they came out with the El Primero movement. So that's why if you see the like for instance, the Revival, which is almost an exact replica of their 1968 Revival that came out. I don't particularly like the ladder bracelet, but still very sick, you know what I mean? So having said that, the Defy came out in 1969. And I do have some old pictures I'll throw up. And aesthetically, it was cool. It looked a little bit ahead of its time for watches back in those days, but and didn't really sell all that well. But still, really nice looking watch. 1970. Then they added a date aperture to it, and then they kind of went from there. So, so they do have the history and this has got the DNA from the Defy back in the 1960s and 70s. So, and then going back to some of these other brands, like if you look at, Gerald Genta design watches, he's not the first person to do this, In fact, if you take the Defy from 69 and then combine it with the Cartier Santos from 1904, kind of thinking that's probably where Genta got a lot of his ideas from. Just saying. There's a lot of similar aesthetics, you know what I'm saying, and design. So let's get into this specifically. First and foremost, we'll get some close-ups and we'll do an in-depth review. All right, so the Zenith Defy Skyline skeleton is a 41 millimeter brushed and polished stainless steel case with a faceted 12-sided bezel. The movement is an El Primero 3620 movement. Now, I initially thought this was the Elite movement from the Defy Classic, but it's not. It's the El Primero 3620, so that's awesome. I'm so glad they put the El Primero in this watch. It has a 1/10 small second indicator at the 6 o'clock position, and it beat 5 hertz at 36,000 VPH, vibrations per hour, and a 60-hour power reserve. It has a large screw-down crown with 100 meters of water resistance. 12 millimeters thick, 46.5 millimeter lug to lug, and sapphire front and back crystal. I love the rotor on the reverse side of this watch. I love the fact that it's the 4-point star. It just looks freaking awesome. Just the little attention to detail. So basically, it looks pretty sick. So if you look at the case, you have the brushed top of the bezel. The sides are polished. You've got beveling on the case that's polished, brushed. You have a signed logo on the crown. Of course, that beautiful rotor. Also, if you look at the reverse, you can see the, I'm sorry, you can see it at the top, not at the back side of it. Probably won't be able to see it in this picture. Yeah, maybe you can, kind of. If you look right about there, you've got the purple pallet fork and escape wheel, which just is really cool. The bracelet is sick, super comfortable, and it's brushed and polished on the sides. And then when you look at it in between the links, it's polished as well. Comes with a rubber strap, which is pretty sick. Let's put this on the wrist. Looks good. Now the difference between, and here we have the skeleton. So a lot of people don't know the difference between a skeleton and a true skeleton. A true skeleton has a skeletonized movement, meaning it doesn't generally, usually there's no dial, just the movement's skeletonized. So what that means is you have the movement, and then it's all cut out, all the pieces of metal that aren't used in the movement, and then intricately designed and decorated, and they look beautiful. In this case, it's a skeletonized dial. So they cut out the dial so you can see the movement. So it's really sick, you know. It's really sick, man. Deployant, double folding bracelet. And Zenith have different color straps on their website, so I'm going to be picking one of those up. They are $310, but you know, and you can only use Zenith brand straps on this because of the way that the bracelet connects. So it's pretty sick. Now again, going back to, cheers. Let's have a sip of beer first, right? The price point of this watch is $11,000. And before you go, whoa, $11,000. Let's think about that for a second. For what you're getting, El Primero movement, which is I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the best movement in the watch industry, you know. I mean, what you're getting on this watch, there's so much watch for the money. You can take an AP. I'm not going to rag on AP. I mean, I don't particularly like them all that much, but you can get an AP skeleton, you know, for $155,000, $200,000. That I don't think is any better than this watch. Certainly they have beautiful skeleton movements, right? Or you can get the Girard-Perregaux skeleton Laureato for $44,000, which is another beautiful watch. But it's $44,000, 40, whatever it is, you know. So you're really getting, I mean, so $11,000, $150,000, $43,000. I've tried on the Laureato, the Girard-Perregaux, and it's a sick watch. Don't get me wrong, I do really like the watch, but at that price point, there was no way I would spend the money on it. The same goes with AP. You know, I've not tried on the AP skeleton, but I've tried on multiple APs. APs are extremely fragile. Not sure if you guys know that. They're extremely fragile. You don't, you know, pretty much wear it when you're just not doing anything. You know what I mean? So, but you know, this watch is very robust. You know, it's a solid watch. Zenith really knocked it out of the park. Zenith also have hot horology. They've got one called a Defy Zero G, which has a gravity control module that's self-regulating. But you know, at first I thought it was a tourbillon, but it's, you know, well, and with tourbillons, you know, it has to do with the way your wrist is, movement, whatever, how that watch is placed in order to regulate, keep timing for that watch. As far as the gravity thing, I'm not too sure about it. I know the watch is fairly expensive, but it's beautiful. They have beautiful rainbow dial, rainbow watches as well at like $68,000. They've got some really cool shit going, man. And Zenith really knocked it out of the park with this watch. It's a beautiful watch. It wears really well, looks good on the wrist. One thing is 41 millimeters generally at this point now too big for me, just by about a millimeter. But in this case, it wears really well because the lug to lug is shorter. You know what I mean? Where that bracelet integrates into it. So I think it's not only great value for money, and again, the 1/10 of a second. So that small seconds at the 6 o'clock position does one complete rotation every 10 seconds as opposed to every 60 seconds. Not something I would ever use, but it looks kind of cool. Indices on this dial are polished as well, so it's kind of hard to get when you're looking at the dial, but in this particular video. But overall, I think it's well worth the money. I think Zenith knocked it out of the park. Zenith, at this point now, and they've always been one of my top brands, but I'm going to say about now they're my top 3 for sure, if not top 2. Obviously Rolex, everyone knows I'm a Rolex fan, but I grew up with Rolex. Rolex is what I've known. Cartier as well. So you got Rolex, Zenith, and Cartier. Those 3 not in that particular order, but it's right in there. So having said that, if you are deciding on undecided on what you want to get, and this watch appeals to you, it is well worth it. So having said that, I think that's all I got to say, and I appreciate everyone who likes and subscribes, and we'll see you on the next one. All right.